It's official, and what was anticipated to be a very exciting trade deadline for the Cincinnati Bengals. It has been confirmed surrounding Trey Hendrickson's future with this team, and it has fans split. We're to break down exactly what the reports are as the trade deadline not only has officially passed, but some new details have emerged surrounding their plans with Hendrickson and why they didn't make any moves. But we also have to go over a few other things on this episode as the Bengals now have to look forward to the game on Sunday. But before we get into it all, quick reminder, folks, hit that subscribe button. Your guys' support has been unbelievable. Isaac, the trade deadline has come and gone. They made one move, and boy, was it early. It was in the wee hours of the morning. They made a trade. We'll get your thoughts on that as well, and everyone down below. I had a video on it. It was I don't really like the move, but we'll dive into that later. Let's focus on the man of the hour, and that is Trey Hendrickson. So the Bengals decided to stand pat here, stand firm, and not trade Trey Hendrickson. The deadline deals have come and gone, and the Bengals did not make any last-second deals. Trey Hendrickson stays in Cincinnati, and there was a lot of speculation over the last 24 to 48 hours about Trey Hendrickson potentially going to the Cowboys. And ultimately, that report was half true as the Cowboys went out and got another player not named Trey Hendrickson. They made a plethora of moves. But Isaac, Trey Hendrickson, he's staying in Cincinnati, which means now this team is not going for it necessarily. They did trade Logan Wilson, but they're standing pat, hoping Trey can make some sort of impact this year. Maybe they make a miracle run for the playoffs. But they have to make the decision in the offseason to either A, extend him, let him walk for nothing, or you can, well, I guess you get a compensatory pick, which we'll dive into later, or a franchise tag. But a lot of fans wanted him gone, and they were never going to wave the white flag, according to Paul Denner. That is the one fact they've been consistent about forever, almost no matter the circumstance. Isaac, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it shows that the Bengals feel like they can still win. They would have probably traded away more than just Logan Wilson.
Yeah.
I mean, he came out and said he wanted to be traded. So otherwise, they probably would have kept Logan Wilson around as much as he was benched. I think it's interesting to see that, a lot of fans were wanting Trey Hendrickson to be traded. And Jerry Jones didn't help that because he said, I have a big announcement. And the big announcement was Logan Wilson, not Trey Hendrickson. So kind of pulled a fast one on a lot of people. I think some Cowboys fans were kind of disappointed too. They were expecting Trey Hendrickson to be in that trade, but yeah, it's kind of a typical little trade. Just hey, we're moving on from Logan Wilson, and I'm kind of with you. Like they only got a seventh rounder for him. That was kind of disrespectful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we'll dive into that a little bit as well. Seventh rounder was their haul they got back. Now we look at some of the trades made across the NFL. Some wide receivers were on the move. Rashid Shaheed, obviously Jacoby Myers. The Bengals are never going for any of those guys. However, there were some, defensive players that were on the move. Now the Bengals are never going to buy. They were never going to give up 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner. But at the same time, it is interesting that you look at you can see this here. Bengals fans watching our former defensive coordinator get Sauce Gardner in Indy while we trade Logan Wilson for a 7th rounder. I think this is what has fans a little bit, I guess, on edge would be the word, because you look at other teams now. I mean, it was our new defensive coordinator. He's off to a rough start. That's definitely, Al Golden. That's definitely maybe even an understatement. But do you have any, I guess, leftover feelings about the trade for Logan Wilson, but most importantly for now, people saying to trade Trey Hendrickson because of not only the season being a wash, but also looking at what some of the other teams are doing. I don't know if you can compare what the Indianapolis Colts are doing to the Bengals. The Colts are 7-2. They actually just lost to the Steelers somehow, but they lost to the Steelers, whereas the Bengals, like this report says, yes, they're not waving the white flag. They're not necessarily tanking. Like you mentioned, they had some other pieces they could have traded, but they're going to play it out, hope that Joe Flacco can get them a few more wins. And I do ultimately have a weird feeling deep down that Joe Burrow is going to make a return sooner than a lot of people anticipate. And do you think they should have traded Trey Hendrickson is the big question. And if not, where do you envision them? And let us know down below in the comments as well, going for, the offseason. Because you hear people are talking about franchise tagging.
Yeah, I've kind of commented before. I think you don't give him up for that first round. That's what they were expecting, was if they were going to move on from Hendrickson, was get a first rounder in return. They've said as much starting out the beginning of the year. I was hoping if they did, they would be able to get a first rounder. They're going to need a lot of help on this defense, and that's where next year in the draft they need to really make that priority. I think it goes without saying. And I feel like, yeah, why not? If you can't get that first round pick, let him play out the rest of the season, because he is coming off of that hip injury. That could have been part of it. Maybe that's why other teams didn't want to pull the trigger on moving and being that first round pick that the Bengals wanted. But I think going the franchise tag route is probably the best option. You have him under contract for next year. So if somebody doesn't want to give up a first rounder, something that the Bengals will be willing to move him for, you at least have him to play with. Like you said, Joe Burrow is anxious to come back. So maybe at the very least, if you want to look at a silver lining, Bengals fans, if Burrow comes back toward for the end of the year, that's him knocking off the rust to be ready for next year. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and obviously you're not stuck with nothing here. You can see here from Malik Wright. I hope Trey Hendrickson, is indeed a part of the Bengals' long-term plans, and assuming he's franchise tagged, of course, they negotiate in good faith. The hope now is that Henderson comes back after the bye and helps his defense. If he's not, then we have very big issues. And obviously, you do get a compensatory pick, so the Bengals were never going to trade him for less than what that pick was. I believe the third-round pick or fourth, whatever it is. So that was obviously a big part of this as well. And a franchise tag will cost them around $34.8 million, which is pretty expensive, but we are talking about someone who's very good. And I do think they would have traded him if they got a first-round pick for him. However, you look across the NFL now, there were picks flying. There were, multiple firsts going. So on the surface, you're thinking, okay, how did the Bengals not get a first-round pick for Hendrickson? Then you start to realize hasn't had an insane year this year, obviously needs a contract extension after this year, and is injured as of the time of the deadline. So all these things were going against it. They probably got offers for third-round picks, maybe even a second-round pick. But at that point, I think they would rather, keep them and probably franchise tag him. Because you look at, the depth chart and how things are going here. Offense is never going to be an issue. They were never going to trade for an offensive piece. You just don't need any. Could they have traded for some of the defensive pieces? Those costed a ton at this year's trade deadline, like a lot. They would have never done that either. And you look at the other side, you even look at teams like the Steelers, where they needed offensive pieces. They stood pat as well. And that should go to show you how expensive players were at this deadline. So I think that helps a little bit. But at the same time, you could also flip that and say, why didn't we trade some of our pieces if it was such a seller's market?
I agree with you. Yeah, it's just kind of the way that Bengals treat the trade deadline. They very rarely make those trades. However, you still want some excitement because as much as this team is probably missing out on the playoffs this year, I mean, those chances went out the door with the loss to the Bears and Jets for that matter. But you wanted some excitement. Do something where at least you can build towards the future. Like you said, it's crazy. The Colts are showing they are all in trading 2 first rounders today. I'm still in disbelief, but I guess the argument can be that is younger. Hendrickson is 30 years old, so that's also the other factor going into what you're saying about his salary. That was one thing that was going against him, but I think he's still worth that, in my opinion, if he's going to be not slowing down. Now, if he starts slowing down, that's obviously because of his age, but I think he's a big part of that defense. And for crying out loud, the Bengals don't have anybody else that can rush the quarterback right now. You got to have him to at least mentor, just be some kind of contribution, because it's just going to be sad if Hendrickson goes and they're still playing like we're going to try and make the playoffs. It was going to be really ugly. Let's just say that.
And they gave up one of their, as bad as it is to say, one of their best defensive players in Logan Wilson this year, because of how bad the defense has been for basically a bag of chips. So let us know down below what your thoughts are on all this. It's a crazy time. But that being said, lots of news still coming out. We'll keep you up to date every step of the way. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.